What would you do if your destiny had already been determined before you were even born? If, from your very first breath, the world around you told you that you had no choice, that your life didn't belong to you? For thousands of girls in a small village in the heart of India, this isn't a hypothetical question, but a harsh reality. This is what you're about to witness on World No Filter. Want to be part of a journey full of discoveries, entertainment, and content that will truly surprise you? Subscribe to our channel by clicking here and never miss another video. Hidden among the majestic landscapes of Alwar, a cruel fate repeats itself generation after generation. In a world where prostitution isn't a choice but a duty passed down through lineage, hope becomes an unattainable luxury. But how does a place reach this point? How can society allow such a destructive cycle to continue unbroken? Today, we're going to explore the quiet alleys of this village, where secrets are kept under lock and key, and where silence holds more weight than any spoken word. We'll hear the stories of women who live in the shadow of indifference, but who, despite everything, find ways to resist. Because even in the darkest of nights, there are always those who dare to dream of a different dawn. India is a land of deep contrasts. While it boasts one of the fastest-growing economies in the world, it also harbors some of the most glaring inequalities. On one hand, we see a country on the rise. Megacities like Mumbai, New Delhi, and Bangalore are hubs of innovation and technology, driving global advancement in areas such as artificial intelligence and space exploration. The emerging middle class and young entrepreneurs are positioning India as a future global leader. On the other hand, there is a side of India that remains untouched by progress. In thousands of villages scattered across the country's interior, life continues as if time had stood still. Infrastructure is fragile, education remains a privilege, and public services are scarce. Most of the rural population still depends on subsistence farming, and economic opportunities are almost non-existent. In Alwar, this reality reveals itself in a particularly cruel way. With no access to formal employment, many families resort to desperate measures to survive. Prostitution, elsewhere often considered a personal choice, here has become a forced tradition, passed down from one generation to the next. This isn't just a question of morality, but a brutal reflection of the absence of alternatives. The divide between urban and rural India is more than an economic disparity. It is a vast social and cultural chasm separating two nearly irreconcilable realities. While major cities invest in cutting-edge technology and education, villages like Alwar remain isolated, disconnected from this revolution. This paradox is evident even in the opportunities available to women. In some regions, women are breaking historical barriers in the workforce and politics. In others, like Alwar, gender still dictates one's fate from birth. Here, to be born a woman is to be born with a preordained sentence. The lack of infrastructure further perpetuates this cycle. Access to education is limited, and few children manage to study beyond the early years of elementary school. Without education, the job market becomes an unreachable dream, and poverty remains an inescapable trap. While India shines in the global spotlight for its innovations, the other side of this reality remains forgotten. The pressing question is, how long will India continue to be divided between these two worlds? The future may be promising for some, but for these women, tomorrow still offers little hope. At dawn in Alwar, the dusty roads begin to stir with life, but what appears to be an ordinary landscape hides a cruel reality. For many girls, a new day does not bring hope, it marks the continuation of an inescapable cycle. They wake not to go to school or to play, but to prepare for a fate they never chose. The faces of these girls, made up and adorned with vibrant colors, mask the weight of a responsibility imposed by necessity. They are not just children, they are the livelihood of their families, trapped in a system that turns them into commodities. Parents, suffocated by poverty, often see this reality as inevitable. For them, this imposed profession is the only way to put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads. Brothers, no matter how much they may want to change this reality, are powerless in the face of a cycle that seems unbreakable. Prostitution in Alwar is not viewed as a dark secret, but as a silently accepted tradition. Silence here is more than just a social pact. It is an invisible barrier that prevents any attempt at change. Any questioning is met with suspicious glances, for to challenge this system is to threaten the survival of the very community. Education, which could be the key to freedom, remains an unattainable luxury for many of these girls. The few schools that do exist suffer from a lack of resources, and school attendance is often interrupted by the immediate need to earn income. The cycle continues because there is no visible escape. But even amid hopelessness, there are voices that resist. Some women, defying all odds, find ways to break free from this fate and strive to create alternatives for future generations. Small community groups and NGOs are working to provide vocational training, giving these women the skills to achieve financial independence. The reality of Alwar is a harsh reminder that inequality is not only economic, it is also social and cultural. The silence that surrounds this practice is what allows it to persist. Breaking that silence is the first step toward real change. The perpetuation of generational prostitution in Alwar is not an isolated phenomenon, but rather the result of a set of structural factors that trap entire communities in a cycle of despair. To truly understand this reality, we must examine the root causes of the problem. Most families in Alwar live below the poverty line. With limited job opportunities and a fragile local economy, many people are left with no means of survival other than resorting to desperate alternatives. In the absence of industries or infrastructure, prostitution becomes one of the few immediate ways to earn an income. For many communities, prostitution is not merely seen as an economic activity, but as a tradition passed down through generations. Families who have been marginalized for centuries have come to accept this fate as inevitable. To question this practice is to challenge a deeply rooted social structure. Education is the most powerful tool to break the cycle of poverty, yet in Alwar it remains a distant privilege. Many children drop out of school early to help support their families. Without education, they become trapped in a reality with no prospect for change. Debt is another major factor contributing to this cruel reality. Families take out loans from moneylenders who charge exorbitant interest rates. Unable to repay, they end up offering their daughters as a form of payment, further perpetuating the cycle of exploitation. Understanding these root causes is essential for building real, lasting solutions. The challenge, however, lies in breaking a system that seems unbreakable. Amid these shadows, there is a story that defies destiny. Sita, an 18-year-old girl, grew up knowing that one day she would be expected to follow in the footsteps of her mother and grandmother. But she refused to accept that burden without a fight. Sita was raised hearing that her fate had already been sealed. The daughter and granddaughter of women forced into prostitution, she knew that once she reached adolescence, her life would follow the same path. But within her burned a quiet rebellion, a longing for something different, even if she didn't yet know exactly what that meant. From a young age, Sita watched her mother and grandmother sacrifice themselves to support the family. Yet, contrary to what many might imagine, there was no resignation in their eyes, only a painful acceptance of reality. But Sita wanted more. She wanted to study. She dreamed of a future where she could choose her own path. Her first glimpse of a different destiny came through a volunteer teacher who occasionally visited the village. With a worn notebook and a borrowed pencil, Sita learned to write her name. That small act ignited a flame of hope within her. If she could learn to write, maybe she could also learn to change her future. As the years went by, she became involved with a local NGO that taught skills like sewing and handicrafts to women who wanted to leave prostitution behind. Every stitch sewn into the fabric was a step toward freedom. But the road was far from easy. There was resistance within her own community. Her family feared that by rejecting tradition, Sita might be condemning them all to starvation. Even so, she persisted. Slowly, other girls began to follow her example. With the income from her handcrafted goods, Sita managed to cover household expenses without having to sell her body. Her story became a quiet inspiration, a reminder that even in the darkest places, a sliver of light can still be found. But the lingering question remains: how many other girls, like Sita, are still waiting for their chance to change their fate? Breaking a cycle as deeply rooted as generational prostitution in Alwar requires more than compassion. It demands concrete action, sustainable solutions, and real opportunities for change. Fortunately, some initiatives are beginning to make a difference. paving the way for a better future for these women. Education is the key to breaking cycles of poverty and social exclusion. Yet for many girls in Alwar, attending school remains an unattainable privilege. Recognizing this challenge, several NGOs have implemented literacy programs specifically aimed at vulnerable girls. Community schools have been established to provide free and accessible education. More than just learning to read and write, these children are encouraged to dream and to envision a future beyond the fate imposed upon them. The challenge, however, lies in keeping these initiatives running amidst scarce resources and the lingering social stigma that continues to undervalue female education. Without alternative means of livelihood, many women remain trapped in prostitution simply because they have no other option. Projects that teach technical skills and trades, such as sewing, embroidery, handicrafts, and cooking, are giving these women a second chance. Professional training programs have enabled many women to earn a dignified income. Small businesses, such as sewing cooperatives and handmade goods production, are helping to create viable alternatives. By selling their products at fairs and even online, these women are, for the first time, gaining control over their own lives. Prostitution leaves not only physical marks but also deep emotional scars. Many women carry traumas from abuse, violence, and rejection. Without proper support, it's difficult to rebuild self-esteem and believe in the possibility of a different life. Psychological support centers are emerging to offer therapy and emotional assistance. This safe space is essential for women to heal, regain their dignity, and start over. Group therapy sessions, individual counseling, and empowerment workshops help them envision a future beyond marginalization. The fight against forced prostitution cannot be led solely by NGOs and independent groups. Greater commitment is needed from both government and society to create the conditions for real transformation. This includes stricter laws against sexual exploitation, investments in educational infrastructure, and incentives for businesses to hire women from these communities. Microcredit programs, for example, have enabled some women to start their own businesses, breaking free from economic dependence and ensuring a safer future for their families. The involvement of society as a whole is essential to ensure that these transformations are not temporary, but lasting. Real change begins with individual stories. Sita, whose journey was described earlier, is proof that resistance is possible. Her courage inspired other girls, and together, they formed a small support group that refuses to accept the fate imposed on them. With the help of a local NGO, this group is becoming a force for change within their own community. The impact of these initiatives is already being felt. There are still many challenges, but every woman who finds an alternative represents a spark of hope. The road ahead is long, but the development of concrete solutions is showing that these women's destinies can, indeed, be rewritten. The question that remains is, if small initiatives are already making an impact, what more could we do to accelerate this change? The story of Alwar is a harsh reminder of how poverty, inequality, and lack of opportunity can trap entire generations in a cycle of despair. But it is also a story of resistance, of women who refuse to accept the fate imposed upon them and who, against all odds, strive to create a new reality. The initiatives that have emerged both within and outside these communities show that change is possible. Every community school, every professional training program, every emotional support network represents a step in the right direction. However, these solutions are still not enough to completely transform Alwar's reality. True transformation demands a stronger commitment from both society and government. It is essential to implement public policies that ensure access to education and employment for these women. Economic incentives, microcredit programs, and initiatives aimed at social reintegration are crucial steps in providing them with real alternatives beyond exploitation. Society also has a vital role to play. The more people become aware of this reality, the greater the pressure for effective change. Sharing stories like Sita's, and those of many other women from Alwar, is an important first step toward breaking the silence and inspiring concrete action. But we must ask ourselves, what more can we do? We can support organizations that work directly with these communities. We can demand that governments implement protection measures and create real opportunities. We can challenge the prejudice that continues to marginalize these women. Alwar doesn't have to remain a symbol of hopelessness. It can become an example of how solidarity, commitment, and collective action can rewrite destinies. Every small change, every girl who gets the chance to study, every woman who finds a dignified way to support herself, represents a victory against a system that, for far too long, has fed on pain and silence. Whether through education, emotional support, or the creation of new opportunities, change is already happening. But it needs to be scaled up and accelerated. The challenge is great, but hope is greater. The future of these women can be different, and it's up to all of us to be part of that transformation. The question that remains is, are we ready to be part of that change? Because, in the end, this is not just about Alwar's future, but about our collective commitment to human dignity and social justice. We hope this journey has been as moving for you as it has been for us. And with that in mind, and considering the effort it takes to produce these videos, we would truly appreciate it if you could leave a like and a comment. It's the best way to support our work and help us keep bringing you the best content every week. If you enjoyed this video and haven't subscribed yet, don't wait. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the fascinating stories we release weekly. And now, check out this video to discover one of the most captivating places on the planet. Don't miss this chance to explore the wonders that this and many other places have to offer.